I'm sitting next to a pile, like a giant pile, of all new makeup products that I've been testing out for the last few weeks or months, and I'm so excited today to share my final thoughts on these. I'll let you know which ones I like, which ones I did not like, and I applied demo clips of all of these products in natural light so you can see the way that they look on my face. We have so much to discuss, so let's jump into it. I'm gonna break these up into category based on like what type of product they are. So we're starting under complexion because I've tested out about a million foundations lately. Starting with the Polite Society More Than a Pretty Face Skin Caring Foundation. They describe this as a medium to full level of coverage, and I would say that's pretty accurate. Upon the first layer, it's pretty medium, but you could get it to what I would consider on the lighter side of the full scale. So not extreme coverage, but still pretty considerable coverage from this if you were layering it up a little bit. I will say the packaging, you might like it or you might not. I think it's super bulky and it takes up a ton of room in my drawer. So if that is a negative to you, I did want to go ahead and call it out. I mean, to compare it to another base product we're gonna review in a moment here, the Supergoop Protec Tint, like look at how little this is compared to this, and this has more product. So this is just incredibly bulky, and the packaging is like all plastic. I mean, you might like it, you might not, but it is very bulky. You know me and you know packaging is important, but this wears pretty well. I find it has a nice blurring effect on the skin. The shade that I have is really not my perfect shade. I have the shade Very Light N, which I was actually shade matched to at an event, though I mean, in hindsight, I think a better shade match would be Fair Neutral, but you know, it was tough. We were at an event, we're inside, there's really not much lighting, it's artificial light, we're matching to my neck. So if you are around my skin tone, this shade is slightly too dark for me, but I can definitely make it work. My pros and cons for this foundation: pro, I think it looks very perfecting on the skin. It has, like I said, a nice medium level of coverage, and I think it's very blurring and smoothing without looking too makeupy on the skin. Like, I wouldn't describe it as undetectable. It is a medium to full coverage foundation, but I do think it looks about as natural as it can for the coverage level. My cons are in the wear time. I find that it really breaks apart on my chin specifically throughout the day. That is definitely more of a trouble area for me, where a lot of foundations do break down, but I find that this one, faster than others, starts to break down and look a little bit dry, and the coverage starts to disappear in this area faster than other foundations for me, especially foundations that are this type of foundation. You know what I mean? Like a skin tint, sure, might start to fade away faster because generally those don't wear super well, but this type of foundation and the coverage level I would anticipate would wear better on my chin than it actually does. In addition to that, I find that it really sinks into my forehead line, like pretty significantly, and almost to the point where I can't even just like tap it back out, and I feel like then it amplifies that. So it has not become a new favorite foundation for me. I would say it's an average formula. I don't think it's the worst I've tried, but it's not one I'm shouting from the rooftops about. An SPF skin tint, these have been all the rage lately. This is the Supergoop Protec Tint. It is SPF 50, PA+++++. 4 pluses. This one I also don't have in quite my perfect shade. It is the shade 22W. I think a better shade match for me on this one, if you are on my skin tone, would probably be 14N. That being said, I definitely can make this work. It's not way too dark for me, but it's a little bit too dark for me. Now, this is a sheer to light coverage product, and I was actually pretty impressed and kind of surprised by the coverage when I first tried this. I was anticipating it to be pretty much sheer, but it actually blurred out quite a bit. And you'll see in the demo clips the way it almost camouflages some of my freckles. I feel like that's always a good test for me of a coverage level of something. My freckles on the outer portion of my face, especially now in the end of summer, they're a little more prominent. And so that is how I gauge where the coverage level of a product is, and this actually blurred them out quite a bit more than I was expecting it to for being like a tinted sunscreen. Tinted sunscreens are tricky because if you're using this as a sunscreen alone and not layering another sunscreen underneath it, you do need to remember to use enough product, and that's where it can be a little bit challenging because it is a pigmented tinted complexion product, so applying a lot of this sometimes can look a bit heavy. I have run into that a little bit. Like, I think I would prefer the results of this if I could use less, but then using less would mean I'm not getting the sun protection that I desire for this product. So sometimes I almost want to layer it over top of another SPF, but you definitely can wear this alone and wear enough of it, but just know is you're gonna have to take a little bit more time like really blending and working it into the skin. With this, I like to apply it with my fingers. I'm a little bit hesitant to use a brush or a sponge with this just because I wanna make sure all that I'm applying is going onto my skin because again, I'm using this for SPF. It has a very dewy finish to it, so you have to like that look. Personally, I find myself wanting to powder over it a little bit, though I can wear it on its own, but just know it is a very glowy product. And sometimes I feel like it hasn't like fully dried down on my skin where I feel like my hair is gonna get stuck to it, if you know what I mean. Outside of that, one bizarre thing that I've noticed with this is the way it interacts with sweat. So I have a sweaty face, okay? If you have a sweaty face, you know the struggle and the way it can kind of mess with your makeup a little bit. But this, when I apply this and I'm wearing only this and I go outside and I'm sweating a little bit, I tend to sweat around like the mustache, you know, the dreaded mustache sweat. I tried to take a photo of this the other day. I don't think the photo fully captured it, but I will show you hopefully to demonstrate. Hopefully you can kind of see what I mean. It did the weirdest thing around the sweat, and it probably also had to do with the peach fuzz on my face and the sweat and the sunscreen. They were like all fighting each other, but anytime I wear this and I start to sweat, it starts to cling together and move around, and like you can really see it on my skin under the sweat. And this is not the only product I've noticed that I'll have trouble with. Like obviously sweat is a tough thing with makeup, but being a sunscreen, you know, a lot of times it's something you're wearing outside, there's a high chance of sweating. So I wanted to call that out if you also are cursed with a sweaty upper lip. This is not gonna be its friend, okay? But outside of that, this is a product I see myself using a lot on days that I'm not doing makeup. Like I'm not necessarily reaching for this as my real foundation and then doing a full face on top of it, though you could. For me, I'm more so enjoying this product on the days where I'm really not wearing makeup, but I do obviously want to apply some sunscreen and then get a little bit of coverage on the face. So I've been liking to take this, plus actually, do I tell you now or do I wait? A blush we're gonna talk about later, okay? Sneak peek, but take those two together, maybe a little bit of a brow gel, and then boom, that's it, no makeup. I have also taken this and used it just as my sunscreen and then applied regular foundation over top, and I actually don't think it looks like too heavy or cakey or too much product. I thought it wore pretty well that way, so that could be a use for this as well. Price on this is $44 and it's slightly larger than your standard foundation. It is 1.18 fluid ounces. But that is gonna move us into a similar product, but no SPF coverage. This is the new Sigma Skin Perfector Hydrating Tint. So I have shades 2 and 3. I can kind of wear both of them. 2 is a better match for me, but really my best match is kind of a mixture of both of these. In the demo clips, I mix them together, but I think I got a little bit too much 3 in there. I probably needed a little bit more 2, but regardless, this only comes in 6 shades, which I think is such a disappointment because I know it's designed to be a very sheer product where you do have a lot of range per shade, but shade 3 is the middle shade in the entire range, and I, with my pale skin, can wear shade 3. Like it's a little bit too dark for me, but in what world should I be the middle shade of the foundation? So I know these are designed to be really adaptable and a shade is supposed to have a lot of range to it, but I still think they need to really expand it. Okay. Another interesting thing about these, they dry down quite a bit darker. So when I'm first applying shade 3, it looks like, oh, this is gonna work for me. But then once it dries onto my skin, it's like a solid 2 shades darker. And even the undertones of these are a little bit strange. The 2 that I have, shades 2 and 3, are this very like peachy orange shade. So I don't know, it's a bummer for me because formula wise, this is fantastic. It's the foundation that I have on my skin today. I think it's hydrating. I think it has a little bit of like a blurring property to it, but it's not overly glowy. It looks natural, it wears well. Like the product itself is fantastic, but the shades just are not great. Not only are there not very many of them, but even the undertones are a bit weird, and then they dry down so much darker. So this product is not my favorite. I had really high expectations and high hopes because I love Sigma. And I do like this, like I said, like I can make it work, but I just don't think the shade is my perfect match. And if they could rework the shades, I would really enjoy this. But This one retails for $39. I am an affiliate with Sigma, so you can use my code to get a discount. So you could get it for even less than $39. They do also run a lot of offers pretty consistently. So there's always a discount available. So I kind of think of these as like less than $39. So price-wise, not bad. I just don't love the shades. This next one, I love the shades. I don't love the formula. You know, it's so hard. I think I spoke about this in another video. It's really challenging to make foundations that actually are like skin tones and look like skin. And so many foundations, even like if they're meant to be warm, they're like straight up yellow or orange. Or if they're meant to be cool, they're like actually pink. Perfector nails it. Like the shades and the undertones on this foundation are phenomenal. This is the Major Skin Hydra Luxe Luminous Skin Perfecting Foundation. One of the most expensive foundations at Sephora. This retails for $58. I wear the shade 5 Golden Neutral, and it is one of the best shade matches that I've found that truly looks like skin. And I think part of the reason this looks phenomenal upon application is that it looks like it could be my skin because the color is right. Whereas so many other foundations, they're never quite like a true skin tone color. They're too pink or they're too yellow or they're too orange. Like I think Perfector really understands skin. I think this brand nailed the shades, or at least the ones that I've tried. The skin tones are phenomenal, but the formula is not my favorite, especially for the $58 price tag. This is a very dewy, luminous foundation, which is what it claims to be, so I understand that, but it's almost dewy to a fault. It's not that it looks sweaty or oily, because I think it looks healthy on my skin, though I did have a lot of comments from people saying, you thought I looked sweaty or oily, which perhaps I did. I thought in person it looked naturally glowy, but where I find this to be challenging to use because of the dew is when I'm working with other products. It's like too dewy for things to lay well on top of it, especially powders. Now, that can happen if something is like hyper dewy. A powder is gonna mix with it in a strange way and almost kind of clump up. That's definitely what happens with this. So I find applying powder products over top of it rarely sits well. You have to go in really strategically to make this work if you're applying it with a bunch of other products. Creams, I think, blend a little bit better with this, but then at that point, your face is gonna be like so glowy to take this hyper glowy foundation and layer a ton of creams over top of it. Even on my dry skin, it's a lot. Granted, I prefer a more mattified finish, but my qualm with this is not even the finish, it's just the way it interacts with other products and also the wear of this. There's really no longevity there, and by the time it starts breaking apart, it's separating, it's again reacting weird with just any other product on the face because it's so dewy. Now, I'm being rather nitpicky on this because it is a $58 foundation, and I just think there are so many phenomenal alternatives at Sephora that are around $20 less than this that perform better. So as much as I wanted to love this, and I think the packaging is beautiful and the undertones are fantastic, I just don't like the product and I really can't recommend it. Those were all of the foundations. Now let's talk about a concealer. This is the Bare Minerals BarePRO 16-Hour Wear All Over Skin Perfecting Matte Concealer. Now, right away, my opinion on this drastically changed when I got a better shade of it. So if you watched my video testing this out, I had a shade that was far too deep and far too yellow for me. Again, just the undertones. But I now have the shade Fair 150 Cool, and I'm enjoying this product a lot more. So first of all, this has SPF 25 in it, and in my initial video testing it out, I was kind of confused by SPF coverage in a concealer because typically it's a product that you're going to be using in specific areas as opposed to all over the face. But I actually had a lot of comments from subscribers saying that they were excited to see a concealer with sunscreen in it because you were telling me you don't always get your sunscreen right up under your eyes, so you like the idea of having a little bit of added protection there. And once I heard that, I'm like, you know what? I kind of like that because I know as well, I try to get my sunscreen up there, but sometimes I'm a little worried it's going to burn my eyes, so I don't always go as close as I probably should. So with that in mind, I do think this could be beneficial to have concealer with some added sun protection, though obviously I wouldn't rely on this to be my sunscreen. So what's interesting here is I like this product and I think it's a good product, but I disagree with almost all of the claims on it. So they describe it as matte. I don't think it's matte. I think it has a nice glow to it, maybe more of like a satin finish, maybe, but absolutely would not call this matte. And they call it full coverage. I would say this is on the low end of medium. So I want to make those call outs right away. I don't think it matches the claims, but I do really like the way that it sits on my skin. I find it to be hydrating and minimally sinks into creases. I would say all concealers sink into lines, you know, as your face moves, inevitably it's going to move with it. So I have yet to find a single concealer in the world that doesn't move into some creases, but I tend to gauge them based on how minimally or maximally they are in my creases. And this definitely not as much as others. Consistency wise, it's definitely on the thinner side. It's a little bit more runny than a lot of other concealers that I tend to reach for, but I still really enjoy this one. I just don't think, again, I don't think it lives up to the claims that it makes, but I think it's a good concealer despite that. Okay, the powders. There have been a lot of new powders lately, and I have a few to discuss, starting with the new ones from Kosas. So I have the lightest shade. This is offered in 3 shades. So this is the same formula as the original Cloud Set powder, which has been a favorite of mine for years, but now they have the new shades. We've got a pink, a yellow, and a peach. So the pink is the one that's best for lighter skin tones. I like this because while they call it a pink and the actual name of this shade is Candy, I think it almost has a lilac effect to it. So it's not even super pink. It almost brightens really beautifully, but I also think that pink undertone to it helps to kind of blend in the blush. I did a side-by-side on my Instagram comparing this to my normal shade in the Cloud Set powder, which is Breezy. And most of you said you preferred this side because you felt like it blurred everything a little bit better, really brightened the under eye and blended into the blush, which I would say is all true. They launched this with this purple brush here. I will say I don't particularly like this brush, but they call it the Face Detailer. It reminds me of a really large fluffy eyeshadow brush. I mean, I don't dislike it, but I don't think it's anything special. The brush I like applying with the most is from the Nikki LaRose brush set with BK Beauty. It is the N14. I find that this has a pretty similar shape to the Kosas one, but it comes to a bit more of a tapered point, so I have even more precision on the under eye. A call out I will make with this, because it is a baked formula, you get a ton of kick up, so it can get a little bit messy, but I find this super brightening, very blurring, very smoothing, all while not being like too powdery looking. Like it feels very dry in the pan because it's baked, but on the skin, I don't think it looks powdery or dry. I think it just looks really smooth. I've been filming kind of actually on and off for a few hours now, so I'm like, let me touch up right in front of you on camera. I mean, I know you did see the demo clips, but I think it just blends in with the blush really well, even though I am wearing more of a peachy orangey blush today. I'm not necessarily applying this over the entire face when I'm using it, though I mean, I'm sure you could because it's not like too pink, but I tend to apply this on my under eyes and then a little on my forehead or my chin, just any area I really want to brighten. I really like this. It has been like an instant favorite for me. The other big it powder of the moment has been this one from Makeup by Mario. This is the Surreal Skin Soft Blur Setting Powder. You saw me testing this out in a previous video, testing out shade 1. And I've now switched to shade 2, and I prefer this one quite a bit. I feel like I've ended up liking this more now that I'm wearing shade 2 versus 1, because I think it's just a little bit better for my skin tone. First call out I will make right away is I love a powdery look, and this is not like a powdery powder. I think it looks very blurred and natural and velvety on the skin, but it's not gonna give you that almost filtered, perfected look that some of my favorite powders will. So I think a lot of people will still really like this because it gives you that velvety finish you want from a powder without looking like too much. You know, it's very lightweight, but I think it's at the sacrifice of not being quite as perfecting and blurring as I like from a powder. As you know, my favorites, Huda Beauty Easy Bake and the Jones Road powder. Both are very powdery powders. What I have found I like doing best with this is gonna look a little bit funny when you see the demo clips. You might laugh at me, but I really like this result of taking a little bit of this in the cap and then taking one of my triangle puffs and really getting it all over that, and then taking a second triangle puff and then like mushing them together until it's pretty evenly distributed between both of these and really worked into the puff. And then I tap over my face with both puffs. It does a good job of locking your products in. I think it looks very natural. I will say with this powder, you can do too much. Like too much is too much with this powder. With other powders, I find you can apply a lot and it's gonna look great. With this one, if you apply a lot, as you saw on camera on the first video that I tried it out on, if you try to like bake with this or apply a lot of it, I find that it just starts clinging really weird to the skin and almost, especially on my under eyes, it looks very, very crepey. So definitely a less is more type of product, but if you like a more subtle but still smoothing and velvety powder, this might be one to check out. Hasn't replaced all my other powders, but it's grown on me. Moving into blush. I have been testing out so many blushes lately, but let's go ahead and start with my favorite formula. I was not expecting this because on paper, I should hate this formula, but I absolutely love it. The Hourglass Unreal Liquid Blushes. Oh my gosh, these are fantastic. I have been reaching for these pretty much every single day. I have had to basically force myself to use the other blushes in this video because I've been wanting to test them out and understand my opinion on them, but I'm always bummed to not be able to wear one of these because that's how obsessed I have been with these blushes, and I did not expect to like these because they're very thin, like serum-like, almost a watery texture of a formula, and I was expecting that to apply poorly. More often than not, a really, really thin liquid product like this tends to be kind of tricky to use in my opinion. I find they interact a little bit strange with other products on my face or just separate too much even. Not these. These are so easy to use, and the cheek just looks like plumped up and juicy. These are so flattering. The colors are so pretty. Like, I didn't think that I was gonna like these, but I have been wearing them every day. But they have a big downfall in my opinion that I wanna call out. I hate the packaging on these. And that's just not even just a preference thing. You know I'm picky and particular about packaging. This goes beyond preference. This, I don't think it works really well. Hourglass, I think this packaging is dumb. So you have the dropper and you have to tip it over, and there's like a button essentially on the back you have to push to get it out. First of all, if you have long nails, you can't do that. Right now my nails are kind of shorter so I can kind of get in there, but when my nail is any longer than this, I have a hard time getting in there. You almost have to bend your finger back kind of funny to push it down if your nail is in the way and you can't actually push into it. So wanted to call that out for anyone that wears nails. But also, out of the three that I have, one of them already kind of like stopped working. The other day, I kept pushing the button and nothing was coming out. So eventually I got it to come out. I don't know if there was something blocking it through the cap here, but I hate this packaging. I wish they would have chosen a dropper or something else. This seems cool in theory and it's a cool idea, but even like this cap on the bottom, this should be flush so I can actually push it. Like you have to, it's pretty deep in there where you can't necessarily get your finger in there to push down on it if you have nails. So hate the packaging. And then even from a preference point, I don't know, this is very light. It feels drugstore. That being said, I was actually shocked at the price. These are $36, which I still think is expensive for a blush. But for Hourglass, I was expecting them to be more considering that their powder blushes are, what are they, 46? Yeah, $46. Also, a little bit of this goes a long way. Think of like the pigmentation levels of like the Rare Beauty blush. It's not quite as pigmented as that. And I actually think these blend better and easier than those because they are thinner and more liquidy, but just know these are super highly pigmented. You need like one drop to do your full cheek. I really unfortunately like the brush that they launched with this. This is the Hourglass number 15. I think it's the perfect size. Like it's tiny enough to really get in there on the cheek and have precision without applying too much, and I feel like you can just stipple it in and it blends out so easily. This does reach over $46 though, which is so expensive for just like one brush to buy to use the blush. I mean, any brush that you already have could work. You could use your finger, you could use a sponge, but I will say my favorite application method is with this. I think it just works perfectly every time, so you can keep it right in that designated area. But an alternative to mention that is still kind of pricey but significantly less than this would be the 112 from BK Beauty. It's pretty similar in shape and size to the Hourglass. It's slightly smaller and slightly less dense, but similar if you wanted something along the lines of this one but you didn't want to spend $46. The BK one is $28, but they do sales pretty frequently. But this, love, and I've been loving mixing this. I've been mixing this so much with a liquid highlighter, just doing a pump of this on the back of my hand, or not a pump, like a one drop of this on the back of my hand, plus a little bit of liquid highlighter. It looks so pretty every single time mixed together on the cheek. This, I actually wish I didn't like this as much as I did, but probably, is this my favorite out of everything? No, it's my second favorite. There's one more product in this video I like more than this, but it was close. It was a toss-up. I am in love with this. Okay, next up is this blush from Polite Society. This is called the Polite Pops Powder Blush, and I have mine in the shade Sydney, which is kind of like a blushy bronzer shade. I feel like these Blonzer type tones have been really popular lately, so if you want something that could be a hybrid used as both, I think this is perfect for that. This I really like because I like a matte look. So this is pretty matte cream product. When you see the demo clips, you'll see it almost gives the finish of a powder blush. So you might like that, you might not. Personally, I really love that look because it's so smoothing, and I feel like this in particular really blurs out any pores. Sometimes a cream blush can emphasize a lot of texture because it is so emollient and dewy, but I don't find that to be the case with this. It's super blurring. And I find that it both blends well but stays in place, which is a tricky combo to find. A lot of cream blushes that are blendable, I find almost just expand too much and I lose control of the product and it gets splotchy and messy. This one I find like kind of keeps the integrity of where you've placed it, but you can tap it into place to get the blended out look without it really getting disrupted and moving and expanding too significantly. When I first got this, I thought it was so tiny. I was like, oh, this feels like a mini. And I was like, okay, this is a $28 product. Why is it so small? Even to compare it to the Hourglass ones that I just reviewed that are also very tiny, like just look how small, look how tiny this is. But it's actually not as small as I thought, okay? So it is 9 grams or 0.3 ounces. And to compare to the internet's favorite blush of the moment, the Rhode Pocket Blush, which is larger in size when you look at them next to one another, the Rhode Pocket Blush is 5.3 grams or 0.18 ounces. So just wanted to mention that because I know when I saw this, I was like, oh, what the heck? This is so tiny. But no, there's a good amount of product in here, especially compared to something like this. Granted, the Rhode ones are tiny and nobody is talking about this. There's like no product in here. Okay, I won't make you wait. I will go back to the product I teased that I said is my actual favorite of the video, and it is this blush from RMS. This one I feel like I'm a little late on, but I did a video with JCPenney recently on Instagram, and this was one of the products that I was testing out from JCPenney in that video because RMS is not at Ulta or Sephora, unfortunately, but this is their Redimension Hydra Powder Blush. I am so in love with this blush. It is like the absolute prettiest, glowiest, but still pretty subtle blush. Again, going back to the idea of a bronzer, something that you can use around the face and not just on the cheeks to kind of give you a somewhat bronzy look, but also a glowy blush look. This is like an everything in one blush. It's a little bit of a blush, it's a little bit of a highlight, and it's a little bit of a bronzer. You've got the glow, but it's more of that like brownish tone. This has been my topper. Whenever I have finished my makeup for the last probably month, whenever I've finished it and looked in the mirror and thought something is not right, this is what I'm reaching for. Add a little bit of this. It just finishes everything off. I was concerned that it was gonna be too glowy. I don't always like a super shiny, glowy product like this. I don't like anything too highlightery. This doesn't look highlighter on the skin. It looks like your face is just so alive and awakened. Now it's expensive. It is $35, but I really do think it's worth it. Right now, it is on sale at JCPenney for $31 from what I'm seeing. Hopefully that's still the sale when the video goes live, but I have been loving this, wearing it every single day. Okay, Bare Minerals blush. I was so excited to try this out. This is the liquid version of their Blonzer. And if you've been on my channel for a while now, you know the Blonzer has been my favorite blush for years. The Blonzer is my favorite blush since, what was it? When did it come out? 2021. I'm in love with the Blonzer. I have 2 shades of it, Kiss of Pink, Kiss of Copper, wear them constantly. And now I have the shade Kiss of Mauve from the new liquid version. I will say, you know how I am with packaging. It's not my favorite packaging. It doesn't feel luxe or high-end, but outside of that, the product is really, really great. This is one that I like to apply with this. These two together, perfect for your no makeup day. Go in with your tinted sunscreen, and then I take a little bit of this on my fingertips, and I never apply blush or anything with my fingertips. I normally don't like that. This, I think, actually wears and applies really well like that. A little bit on my fingertips, tap it in on my cheeks, tap a little bit in on my forehead. Gives you a subtle glow, but looks so natural. When you first watch this, it looks really pigmented, but it sheers out significantly. Now, this, similarly to the blush I just mentioned, is what I would consider an everything product. This is your highlighter, your blush, and your bronzer. So if you like a really multitasking product like this, you probably like this. It has a glow, but it has somewhat of that bronzy tint to it. Now, I don't think it's like the most perfect bronzer shade. Like this one in particular, Kiss of Mauve, is still rather pink. So just know you're gonna have more of like a reddish pink look if you're using it as bronzer. Some of the other shades in the line I think are better for that true Blonzer look. But because this shears out so well, I think it looks so natural on the skin and it's not gonna be too much. This is one of those products that I think of for a minimal makeup wear. If you want as few steps as possible, this is a product I would check out. And next in blush, we have the Evocative blushes. This is from the brand Singe, which was a brand created by YouTuber Angelica Nyqvist. She did send these to me. There are 4 shades total, and they retail for $18 a piece. So right away, the most inexpensive blush that we're mentioning today. I think the price is really reasonable, especially considering this is a small indie brand. There are 4 shades total, and the one that is the most unique, that I feel like I've been seeing the most attention on, is Persistent Persimmon, and I have a little bit of this one on today. This is like a bright yellow blush. This shade is a little bit out of my comfort zone on its own, but I do think layered, it can give a really interesting effect. My favorite shade is probably Timid Tomato, which is a red. I love this because I love a sunburnt blush look. That's what I did in the demo clips. You can see me applying it to get that really like flushed look. These do have a little bit of a glow to it, but I wouldn't consider them like shiny by any means. One call out that I will make is I've noticed with some foundations, especially ones that are on the dewier side, when I apply this, I can get a little bit of separation where the product is applying as I'm trying to blend it out. So to combat that, I make sure I powder really well before applying this. But I think the shades are really interesting and beautiful, and a huge congratulations to Angie on this launch. We also have new eyeliners from Kosas. This is their Soulglazer eyeliner. It retails for $24, and I've been very impressed with these. I find that they're pretty budge proof once they've sat down. I especially like this brown shade called Depth as a tight line shade to apply up here. I mean, I think it's really pretty in the waterline as well, but I like it to tight line. I feel like it kind of fills in any gaps for my lashes. That being said, even though I do think this is a really great formula, like I really don't have any qualms with it, they are $24, and I feel like eyeliner is a category you can find at the drugstore for about half or even a third of that, and there are still so many drugstore eyeliners that are also fantastic, so I don't think you need to spend the $24 on these. I think there are a ton of alternatives out there, but if you had your eye on them, I do think they're a good formula. Another eye product, this one is not brand new, but they did launch a new shade that I was really excited about. So the Ulta Beauty New Heights Mascara. I want to review this one next. This, if you remember, was a favorite mascara of mine a few years back, but they launched a brown shade of this that I was so excited to pick up. This isn't super brown, you know I'm really picky about the brown tone of a mascara. This is the mascara that I have on currently, and I don't know that you would necessarily look at my lashes and say like, oh, they're brown. It's more just like a softer version of a black. So I wish the brown pigment was a little bit warmer and more chocolatey, but that's kind of just a preference thing. The mascara though is still one of my favorites. It has such an interesting wand to it. It's pretty tiny, pretty short, and has short rubber bristles to it. I love a rubber bristle wand personally. This reminds me a lot of the mascara from Addison Rae's brand, Item Beauty. I know that mascara was a favorite for so many people, and now that brand has been discontinued, this is definitely the closest I've found by far to that mascara, not only in the way that it wears, but also the unique, interesting, tiny little wand. They call this a lifting mascara. I don't know. I think so few mascaras that have the claim of like lifting or curling really follow through on that, but I think this is great for a fluffy but defined look. Love this formula, would highly recommend it. It retails for $11, but the Ulta Beauty collection, the in-house brand they have, is pretty consistently on sale, so you could get this for even less. Okay, lips. We have new lip liners from Saie. I was kind of roasting the name of these in my last purchase or pass video. They are called Lip Liner 101, which just seems so unfinished to me. It feels like a title that is then going to be followed up with some instructions like, oh, Lip Liner 101, do this, do that, which I get was probably kind of the thought process here, but I don't like the name, but I love the product, okay? So I have a few of these on today. I shaded a few of them onto my lips, and I just want to say, I sat down to film and like start filming my makeup to then film the clips a couple of hours ago, and I have stopped and eaten food. I have been drinking this whole coffee through a straw, and the lip liner has not budged. Like, it is still there. So I'm so impressed with these. I'm such a lip liner person, and I find these are like the perfect marriage between creamy enough, but not too creamy. Like they're still relatively stiff, but not too stiff where they feel like dried out and waxy. It's like the Goldilocks of a lip liner because it's right in the middle, and I find that that then lends itself to giving me the precision that I want, but also the wear time that I want. There are only 5 shades of these. I want them to come out with even more of them, especially considering a couple of them are pretty similar. Now, they describe this as hydrating, moisturizing, creamy, and nourishing. I wouldn't say it's not those things, but when I think of like a hydrating, creamy, moisturizing lip liner, these are not the first ones that I think about. So if that's the goal that you're after and you're wanting something super creamy and hydrating, I don't know that I would describe these as that. You know, they're a wooden pencil liner, which generally just tends to be somewhat on the drier side. But that all in mind, I don't want my lip liner too creamy. I don't tend to like too creamy of a lip liner because I find them to just be budging all day. To be budging, what am I trying to say? Moving around, like they do budge is what I'm trying to say. These stay in place. I really like the formula, but again, if you're after something mega creamy, you might be disappointed with these, but personally, I've been loving them. Whew, okay, those are my thoughts on all of the new makeup launches. Let me know if you've tried any of these, if you like them, or if you didn't like them. Leave us your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will go ahead and see you in my next video. Bye.